It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show! Hey everybody, it's the Fellowship of Geeks podcast. My name is Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey gang.
Les Webster. Hello! The hell? Or
you almost expected an echo. Hello. Yeah.
Woo! Doing best Julia Childs there. And Liz Newman.
Hello, everybody.
I would ask how everybody's doing, but I think we all know how well Les is doing.
Clearly, Les is already hitting the flask.
Hello.
A little more wine here, a little more wine.
That wacky tobacco or something such. I don't know. Something's going on. So, how are you guys doing?
Good.
Yep.
You had to think about that one, Liz. You weren't sure.
I did. Well, I'm somewhere between how Les is feeling and how Mike is feeling. I'm on the middle ground there.
Hope
I didn't mean to throw you.
Hope everybody out there is doing okay. You know, maybe not on the Les level, but, you know, maybe somewhere in the Liz level will be awesome. So what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy?
I don't know if I can top this.
Don't try.
I'm not even going to try. I'm still working on my pile, so I have caught up, and caught up being relative to when I last purchased my pile. I have caught up with some of my Aftershock books, caught up on Dark Ark, caught up on Brothers Dracul, and I am now working on, this is another sign as to how far behind I am. I am now working on the 100-page Giants, the DC 100-page Giants. I have read the Batman one, which was nice. I am currently working on the Teen Titans one, and the JLA one is on deck. So, lots of fun stuff.
Woohoo!
You've been busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I finally, like I said, things are slowing down enough. I finally am having a chance to read some stuff. So.
Oh.
It's kind of nice. And this being kind of at the end of a 5-week month means more time to, or the review stuff is spread out, so I don't have as much of that to read. So, you know.
Right.
We'll see what happens next week, but anyway.
Right. Okay.
Well, I went and picked up my stash, and I had some trades, so that's what I've been reading. Been reading in the car and that kind of thing, but I don't know if too many people know of him, but a guy named Jhonen Vasquez, he does Invader Zim, but before he did Invader Zim, he did Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, which is kind of a crude, drawn, off humor kind of comic. But in this comic, he had a little friend that pretty much was the only person he wouldn't kill. Partly because he felt bad for this kid because he had, pretty sorry home life like Johnny had. So I guess that was the connection there. But he did a whole trade just on Squee. So that's what I've been reading. Pretty much the same style as Johnny. kind of, the crude drawn. It's black and white. But it's been a cute, my cute horror story, so he fits right in there. So, I've also kind of thumbed through. I haven't really sat down and read yet the Secret Wars stuff. So, I've got that on my to-do list too.
Yeah, that's still that's closer to the bottom of my pile right now.
Right. Yeah, it's a big one. But it looks interesting though. Like I said, yeah. I've been wanting to get more into Marvel, so I think that's a good jump-in point. I think everybody's in it, right?
Everybody was back in '84, pretty much, or a lot of them.
35 years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll find one I like and go from there.
And yes, that's a tease because that is research for episode for next year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Okay. It's far enough out that nobody will remember.
That is called a tease. You're teasing for next year. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Not a problem.
Cool.
It's a different kind of tease than the whole secret project concept.
Right.
It's fine.
Okay.
It's okay.
So,
it's not a problem.
Yep.
Here lately, I have been entrusted with so many secrets, and it's killing me. But I can finally say it. My daughter-in-law and my son came over the other night, and I'm going to have a baby. A baby!
You're going to have a baby?
You're going to have a baby?
I'm going to have a baby, but...
Boy, this is news. No, you're going to have a grandbaby.
I think we lost her.
Uh-oh.
Oops, sorry. I'm dead. But yes, so I will have a little bat baby pretty soon. And it was so cute the way that they told me because, they asked if I was going to be home, and I'm sitting there racking my brain going, is everything okay? Because we had just seen them. I guess part of this story and why it was, so amazing. A week before this, I lost one of my best friends, and it's kind of torn the whole family up over here, and it's kind of been a downer. I mean, the house is so quiet, and so, when they called me, it was kind of like, well, yeah, y'all can come over. I don't know why anybody would want to come over right now, but sure. So I'm racking my brain thinking, James went to jail. Something's wrong. Something's really wrong. So I met them at the door. I watched them pull up. And when they came up to the door, I noticed their shirts had the Batman symbols on them. And I thought, well, that's really cute. And then I got to noticing that hers said Bat Mom and his said Bat Dad. And she had like these little footprints on her belly that says there's a bat in the bat cave. So, of course, I immediately start screaming and, neighbors probably thought I was dying. But it was kind of the news that we needed, My first grandbaby ever, So, yeah. It was definitely pick me up. And couldn't have found a better way to tell me, I don't think if Phil would have answered the door, I don't think he would have caught the reference. Just would have thought, they're wearing matching shirts, So.
Sorry, Phil.
Yeah. But yeah, he would have got it. So it was really cool. But then they're like, but you can't tell anybody. Oh, man. You tell me the greatest news of my whole entire life, other than my own children, but it's like, oh, no. Partly is I work for her best friend who does not know. So every morning I see her and I'm like, don't say anything, Liz. Don't say anything, Liz. This is not your story to tell. So it's been hard. So I've kept my nose in my book and, hi, how you doing? She probably thinks I'm mad at her, but yes, it's been an up and down week, for sure. But I'm just now glad I can finally say, hey, I'm having a grandbaby, damn it.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! Yay!
The damn it is a nice selling point there, too.
Yes, it is. I tried not to be one of those mothers of, when are you going to have a kid? When are you going to have a kid? So they're finally having a kid.
Finally.
Finally. The only thing I love more than puppies are babies. Partly why I work with kids, but so to find out I can spoil my own grandchild now instead of somebody else's kid, I'm just over the moon. Or over the bat cave? Or bat signal, there we go. I'm over the bat signal.
Gotta try to bring it back.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Very
thank you.
Cool.
Yep, congrats.
Thank you.
What are you congratulating her for? She didn't do nothing.
Oh, I did. I was in their head. I was in their head. But yeah.
All right, let's stop that.
Yeah, there you go. Come on.
Let's see. I went traveling this weekend.
He was a traveling man.
Yes, indeed. And had a good time. Went out of state and got to relax. Very fine accommodations and had a good time.
Cool.
Yep, nothing wrong with that.
Okay, for me, I was catching up on some of my reading, and amongst that was a trade called Legion of Superheroes, the Silver Age Volume 1, which is actually probably the first half of the hardcover omnibus that came out some time back. And some of the stories were really kind of fun to read, but some of them I just kind of shook my head at because of some of the writing. There was one story. I believe it was called Supergirl and the Girlfriends or some such like that, and it features Saturn Girl, Phantom Girl, and Shadowlass. No, not Shadowlass. Triplicate Girl. So they come back in the past. They come back from the future and visit Supergirl because she's, she doesn't really have a lot of friends and that kind of stuff. The thing was, I'm reading this and I'm going, there's a sequence there going, oh my God, are we just this stupid? Because Saturn Girl showed up with a lead-lined mask that was covering her entire face. Well, those who are not familiar with the character, she has telepathic powers. So she reached out to Supergirl and said, come find us. So here she comes, she flies out and she sees Saturn Girl. Okay. Face is covered up, but she's wearing Saturn Girl's outfit. She's got the blonde hair and all this. And Supergirl can't figure out who the hell this is. Just because her face is covered up. I'm like, do you not recognize the costume here? And of course, Saturn Girl takes the mask off. Oh, it's Saturn Girl. I'm like, okay. I mean, even the telepathic communications was not in her voice, like it's usually shown in like movies and TVs. It's just
how many other people are talking in your head right now, lady? Jeez.
Yeah, I'm just going, what the hell? And the thing is this was a story written by Jerry Siegel. Because I actually had to go back and I'm like, how dumb is this? How dumb is she? I can't imagine who this person is that's talking to me telepathically, who's wearing a costume of a superhero who has that powers and also has blonde hair, but I can't figure out who she is. And I'm going, oh God, this is the Silver Age. This is definitely Silver Age.
Yeah, there's a lot of hit and miss back in there. That's for sure. When they're good, they're good. When they're not, oh boy.
When they're bad, yeah. When they miss the mark, they kind of miss the mark. I mean, it was a fun story after you get past that. But you're just going,
That's enough to take you out of it too.
Yeah, that's like, yeah, that's pretty much a, oh my God, what the hell are we thinking here?
Yeah.
I also came across a new magazine from TwoMorrows Publishing, and you might remember that publisher because I talked to them about last week with the comic book implosion book that I discussed. This magazine actually came out in June. It's called RetroFan, and this is a fun little magazine. It's all pure nostalgia. But in this first issue, this comes out quarterly. The first issue has an interview with Betty Lynn, who is Thelma Lou on Andy Griffith, and it's funny reading the interview because I was going, oh, I never realized it because the way they always show they show the series out kind of sequence. That basically she left the show after Don Knotts left the show because Thelma Lou was Don Knotts' girlfriend. So when he left town, she pretty much said, I'm not going to stay around, even though Andy Griffith and some of the other actors said, please stay. We can work a way for you to still be in the show and all that. But she decided, no, it's probably the best, and she obviously cried over the decision, but it's a nice little interview. There's another interview with Lou Ferrigno, a great little article about the Star Trek the Animated Series, and this is just it's a fun little magazine that's going to come out every quarter. There's going to be another one here into September. So not too distant future, but I highly recommend these because it's kind of a nice little take a look back, but you'll learn some stuff that you weren't aware of. TwoMorrows also do the back issue magazine Alter Ego. Those are great little magazines, as well as the Jack Kirby Collector. So I highly recommend their stuff. Definitely go. If your local comic shop doesn't have these books, talk to them about try to bring them in. It's definitely worth the effort.
Cool.
I do want to mention one thing. There was a Vincent Price marathon on a few days ago, and I caught one of the movies. And the film I caught was Master of the World. It was a 1961 film. That also starred Charles Bronson as pretty much the lead. Which is funny because now that I think about it, they actually worked together on House of Wax back in 1953. But I did not pay attention too closely to the opening credits. So when I started actually getting into the film, I'm going, oh my God, this is 2,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but it's in the air. And then doing a little research. Oh, this is based off a story by Jules Verne. That explains it. He's ripping off himself. But the thing was, is this the script was actually written by Richard Matheson. It's a nice little story. But it's not one of those that is very familiar. It's American International, and every time I see that logo, American International, I hear Tom Servo in the back of my head saying, how can it be American International at the same time? But
another telling thing about them is Roger Corman did a lot of movies for them.
That's true.
So if that says anything to you, if you know anything there, that tells you something.
Yeah, well, Samuel Zarkov is usually in all the credits, so that gives you a pretty good indication too.
Yep.
it was a nice film. It was a really good film, and from what I did of the research after seeing the film, it was one of Vincent Price's favorite roles. I don't think the character was fleshed out as well as Captain Nemo was, but maybe it was in the books. It certainly wasn't in the film, but it was an interesting little film.
Cool.
So I definitely suggest checking that out if you can find it.
Yeah, Vincent Price. I mean, pretty much anything you can find him in, he's definitely worth watching.
He is.
Oh yeah.
And isn't it Turner Movie Classics that around Halloween time does like a marathon of him?
They'll definitely do the classics. They kind of depend. It kind of depends on they may do a theme.
Yeah.
You know, like one year they may do like the Universal monsters, or the last couple of years or so they've kind of done the Hammer films, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. It would be interesting to see what they do this year. But yeah, I mean, I could definitely see them doing they've done a Vincent Price marathon before, and I would love to see that again.
Yeah. Yep. That would be good.
Which, hey, that's kind of a little bit of a tease. You know, October's coming, so we're going to be seeing a lot more of the spooky films, and that's going to be. I'm ready for that. I'm sure Mikey is too.
Yep.
What's with all the teases?
We're just a bunch of teases tonight.
Tonight, she says.
Tonight.
Well, more so tonight.
I guess.
Before we get into this week's topic, I want to take a couple moments to thank the fine folks at Things from Another World for sponsoring the fellowship. If you would like to learn more of the special deals that they're running, please go to our website, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, and click on the Sponsors tab. And right now, it's just their evergreen deals, such as 40% off comics, statues, toys, and merchandise, 30% off select pre-order manga titles, and 50% off Nick and Dent comics. While you're on that page, you can click on any of those links or click on the little ad at the bottom. That'll take you to their website, and that will let them know that we sent you their way. And take advantage of some of these great deals, and I'm sure there's going to be some more coming in the not too distant future, because hey, you know, it's September, and you know what's rapidly coming this way, the holidays. So it's never too early to start thinking about what you want to get for that special geek in your life for the holidays. So thank you, Things from Another World. Alright. Speaking of spooky movies, nice little segue.
Yeah, we're a little early on this one, but that's okay.
That's okay. We'll get back into it in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
We did want to take some time to recognize that this year is the 50th anniversary of the release of the original cult classic. I don't know if I want to cult classic because it's so well known, but Night of the Living Dead.
Mm-hmm.
October 1st, 1968.
There you go. So yes, we're about 4 weeks early, but hey, we got other things planned. So, but I thought we should not neglect this George Romero classic. That we should say something, because it's a trailblazer.
Mm-hmm.
Should I give a little bit of a plot, or Mikey, do you want to do that, or what?
No, go right
For those
ahead.
who may, okay. I won't go into too much detail of the plot, but it basically revolves around these a group of people who were held up in isolated farmhouse in Pennsylvania, I believe, if my memory is correct.
Yeah.
Trying to understand what is going on because the recently deceased are coming back to life and are eating the flesh of the living. This film reminds me in several ways of the Hitchcock film Lifeboat, because it is a group of people from different paths trying to understand what's going on and trying to survive. If anything, it's a little bit more frantic with Night of the Living Dead than it is in Lifeboat, but there are some similarities, and it's a nice little character film. It was done pretty well considering there was no budget. Most of the actors were not really actors, and they did the best they can to put this thing together. And I thought it was pretty well done, considering with what they're working with. I thought they did a real good job.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are your guys' thoughts?
Well, this was actually probably the movie that gave me my zombie love. It did. It started me down that road, you know. I guess at the time when I saw it, you know, it was different. There wasn't a whole lot of zombie movies that really you can compare to until you can tell there was influences, but most of the zombies nowadays, they're like these slow moving, you know, dead people. I don't know what to say, you know, that they move real slow. There's no sense, there's no reasoning or thinking to this person. They're just moving forward to the next hill. To me, I felt like with the Night of the Living Dead, I mean, they're busting out car lights, they're turning cars over, they're like chasing people out of the cemetery. So, yeah. Totally different zombie, you know.
That's true, because it's funny kind of going back and watching this, that there were different speeds. Mm-hmm. Most traditional zombies are the slow crawling up until a few years ago, I guess when they redid Day of the Dead, and that's when all of a sudden you started getting the speed zombies.
Yeah.
Which I kind of have a problem with those, but with, yeah, I mean, there were some that were actually moving. I mean, they weren't moving real fast, but
yeah,
faster
than that girl was.
Well.
Which I felt kind of useless to the whole movie. I think if I would have been Ben, I would have set her on fire and let her go out there and distract them for a while and got out of there.
Wow.
But
Ouch.
I mean, I know. She just lost her brother and everything else, but he tells her, go get wood. So what does she do? She comes back with like these little toothpick things. What the heck was he supposed to do with those? You know, if I can't use you for zombie bait, at least be useful. You know, I think the guy in the basement was more use than she was, you know. But yeah, this one was definitely, and you know, I know you guys don't watch it, but Kirkman has often recreated some of the zombies that were used in this movie for Walking Dead. And he said that a lot of the influences that he did have for his story did come from the Night of the Living Dead. So definitely one for me to thank them for doing.
Well, sure. I mean, yeah. How many zombie movies since 1968 can honestly claim to not have been influenced by this movie? I mean,
right.
That's the whole deal. That's why this is that's why it is kind of what it is. It's hard, like Tom said, it's hard to call it a cult classic because it is. I mean, we're at the point now where zombies are mainstream. I mean, sure, it's 50 years later, and yes, there were zombie movies before Night of the Living Dead, but it broke the barriers.
It did. Even now, being a movie from the 60s, it has a 97% fresh rate on Rotten Tomatoes. That's hard to get with a new movie, let alone an older black and white movie, you know?
Yep.
When I saw this movie, it was first run, so it was not at a midnight showing, and it scared the bejesus out of me. If you see it now, it may not spook you, but the theater was extremely dark. It was more than normal dark. And as a result, it made me shiver. It was very effective in what it did. It was also coming out at a time when there were several movies, very popular movies, that came out that year, and you just kind of think this was something totally different. In 68, you had things like Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet, you had Rosemary's Baby, Planet of the Apes, 2001, Hang 'em High, The Producers. There are a lot of movies that came out, very popular movies at that time. But this one was definitely different. One, because of the subject matter, and two, the way it was presented. To me, the only two movies that came out that year that would be of the equal would be probably Rosemary's Baby, because of its shock value, and 2001, because couldn't understand what the hell was going on there, but still loved it. I'll admit I was spooked as hell when Night of the Living Dead came up, because I had seen the previous movie by Romero, the one about the knights on motorcycles, and obviously it was nothing like Night of the Living Dead. The Night was filmed in black and white, which was extremely effective. There were not all that many movies at that time that were in black and white. So to forego the blood or the color, especially when you've got the scenes of mutilation or blood on the screen, and you're looking at it and just imagining the color that was evident. I just commend Romero for what he did. It was innovative, it was frightening, and it spawned not only sequels, but so many rip-offs or parodies.
And remakes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course the remakes, I just shrug and go, why? But it was truly effective in what he accomplished.
Right, and made the more so only by the fact that he had zero budget and was basically hitting his friends up to help him shoot the movie. I mean,
Right.
Yes.
He had a budget of $114,000, and it wound up making $12 million domestic and $18 million international.
right, and just to kind of make that make a little sense, what you're reading says it had a budget of $114,000. He spent $114,000 maybe. There was no way. This wasn't. I don't think he walked into this with a budget.
No.
Yeah.
This was entirely independent. And so, I mean, if that's what got spent, then yeah, fine. But
Right. Yeah.
calling it a budget, I think, is a little misleading. And I think I'm looking at the same website you are, seeing the same words. I mean, so I'm not hitting you on this, but
No.
that they call it a budget is almost laughable because he didn't have a budget. He was making money doing other stuff and spending it as he could, getting as much.
That's probably what
as
they
he
meant.
could. And yeah,
Took that to make it.
that's what it cost. Well, that budget is, I don't know. But yeah, I remember seeing a documentary specifically about this a few years back. And yeah, he was, by his own admission, flying by the seat of his pants most of the time. I mean, knew what he was doing, but it wasn't necessarily as well planned as most Hollywood movies at the time would have been.
Yeah.
Or ever. But yeah, he was literally hitting up friends to hold cameras for him and do makeup work and all of that shit. And still managed to make a pretty damn impressive movie.
We did. We watched it knowing this was coming up and everything, and I mean, just, you were talking about if the impact was still there, and I think it is. I mean, with the music that he added, and part of what I liked is like when he's bashing a guy's head in. Today they'd show you that, but it was kind of off camera. It kind of left you to your own
imagination.
Yeah. Yep.
Right, you don't need to show it. That's the
right. But to think of that, and then they said that this movie, before it was released, and even after, they said it was excessive gore, and it's like, wow, times have definitely changed,
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, they were showing them actually digging stuff out of what looked like dead people on the ground.
Right.
Eating it. I mean, come on.
For me, the worst part of the whole movie was the little girl in the basement. That was just messed up. You kind of had that thought, oh, she's sick, and then you find out, oh, she was bit. She's about to kill everybody in that house, So, yeah, that was pretty messed up.
Uh-huh.
I mean, y'all made a valid point. Yeah, he did what he could with the budget he had, but in retrospect, it was probably better that it was in black and white. Because if it was in color, then yeah, it would have been more gory. But I don't know if it would have been more scary. Because it's the stuff that you don't. To me, it's always the stuff that you don't see that's left up to your imagination. Yeah. That can be more scary than anything that can be seen. And yes, I've seen the colorized version of this film, and it's horrible.
I think I saw part of it once, and yeah, it's not the same. It really takes away from it.
Yeah.
That's just not. I mean, I'm not a big, huge purist, but that's just not the way it was made. And
right.
I think it was made in black and white on purpose, and it was so they could play on the minds of people, of the viewers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they could do it a little cheaper. No, not gonna lie. I mean,
right.
You don't have to get red food coloring for everything to do the gore. If it's black and white, nobody's gonna know the difference. It can just be chocolate sauce. It doesn't matter, or whatever the hell they used. I mean, it doesn't make any difference. But yeah,
it's true.
Would you say they made it black and white to escape the rating system?
From what I read with the criticism that he was receiving at the time, I think that could very well be possible. Just because, like Thomas was saying, you didn't see all the blood and the you know. So I go ahead.
I suspect that they made it without really taking into account the rating system. I don't think he cared. I don't know that he was aiming for that big. I don't think he was expecting it to be as popular as it ended up being.
Right.
So I don't know that he cared.
And I don't know if any of you guys are White Zombie fans, but there's several clips of this movie that are in several of his songs and stuff. So that was kind of neat hearing Chili Billy, or was that the news reporter guy, in the movie again. And it's like, Wayne, isn't that from that song? So that's kind of cool too. Especially the part of people rising up and eating the flesh, the living flesh or something like that. It's like that's Rob Zombie.
Right. If you're gonna have a theme, then yeah.
True.
It's a pretty good. I mean, it's obviously a good enough place to start that so many others have done it as well. So
yeah.
Not knocking Rob Zombie or anything, but
no,
he ain't the first, and he ain't the last either. So
well, he's the best one that I like. So
there you go. And that's all that matters, really.
Yep.
With his budget at that time, what would be the equivalent now?
Oh God, that's hard because I mean, if you just go to straight up $1968, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was $1 million, but could you make a movie like that for $1 million now? Probably not.
Probably not.
Mm-mm.
I mean, even if you were subtle like he was, and didn't have just tons of CGI like most of the ones do today.
Yeah.
Because CGI is where your money goes. CGI and Brad Pitt, anyway. Yeah, I don't know if you could do. I don't know if you could do it justice with $1 million budget. I think you'd probably need 20 to even get started.
Yeah.
Something. I'm gonna pull my soapbox out here for a second.
Ooh, cool.
Yay! Because I'm not sure if we've discussed this on. We may have talked about this before on one of our other podcasts, but the people smarter than me, or this kind of thing, look at this film as the birth of the zombies, and that term bugs the hell out of me. Because these are not zombies, not in the definition of what a zombie is. But that's the world we live in now, is that these creatures are considered zombies. They're not. They're ghouls. The strict definition of a ghoul is the reanimated dead who eat the flesh. Zombies are reanimated dead.
Technically,
go ahead.
Technically, even living people who feed on the flesh of the dead are considered ghouls.
Right.
So they don't even have to be dead to be ghouls.
True.
But I see where you're going.
Right.
And,
well, I mean, they even used the term ghoulish in the film, but it's just where the definition of a zombie was brought back to serve the person who brought them back. They're basically tools or stooges or whatever you want to call them.
Right. And that's mainly the voodoo style of zombie, right? And I think the issue is that, I mean, for one, I honestly don't know the answer to this. Do they use the term zombie in the movie?
No, they do not. They just refer to them as the recently deceased, and like I said, they
Those
actually
things out there get used a lot, I think.
I remember the newscaster saying using the term ghoulish when they talk about the fact that when it was realized that they're eating the flesh of others.
Yep.
But the word zombie is not used anywhere in the film.
And yet somehow the culture grabbed hold of those creatures as the new zombies, because that's where they went. That's where it ended up going.
Yeah.
That became zombies from then on.
It bugs
the English language is funny. There are examples of that all over the place. Things get called, the meanings of words change over time. And I'll throw you a fun example. And this is a little weird, but one of the terms for what we now refer to as boys, young male children, one word that was used to describe them or to point them out was girls at one point, way back. This is 300-400 years ago. But yeah, the word girls used to mean male children. That changed along the way somewhere. So stuff, I mean, it's not an unusual thing for that to happen. That's just the one that popped into my head. There are countless other examples of words or terms that have just come to mean things different than they originally did. You don't have to get far into Dungeons and Dragons, just as another kind of weird example, to start to see wild and interesting variations on undead creatures. Not the least of which are ghouls and zombies, and that they're very different creatures. And if you look at kind of their definitions that they use, which also have evolved over the 40 some odd years that the game has been around alone, there are similarities in both directions. So I don't know. It is interesting to see how the culture's perception of that shifted there. And I mean, it is clear that this is where it started in that regard. I mean, there weren't movies like this. Anytime you saw what is now considered to be a zombie movie, it's just not like this. I mean, the easy one that springs to mind is The Last Man on Earth. Those were very different creatures than what Romero came up with. There are some similarities, but very different creatures.
Right.
And you can go back even further to a movie called White Zombie back in the 30s, Bela Lugosi movie, I believe. Back at that point, it was more of the voodoo style zombies. They were not dead creatures. Those were people. They were alive. They were a voodoo zombie. It's more of a trance-like state. The creatures are alive. And yeah, they are basically just mindless automatons who do whatever their master commands them to do. So there's examples of stuff like that all up and down movies and just culture in general. I'm drawing a blank on whether there were any actual like ghoul type movies before this. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not thinking of any.
I can't recall any right now. It doesn't mean that there weren't any.
Oh, right.
The documentary you were talking about, do you happen to remember what the name of it was? Was it The Birth of the Dead?
It was Birth of the Living Dead.
Yeah. I had seen that one. I think I mentioned seeing it on one of our prior episodes.
I think we talked about it like a year or two ago.
The thing that was funny about seeing this documentary was the fact that it had a hard time trying to be shown in theaters, and when it was usually done as a double bill with a Vincent Price American International. Hey, it all kind of circles around. but it would be one of the Roger Corman horror films that starred Vincent Price, and then it was followed up by Night of the Living Dead, and that kind of upsets some kids because that was who's going to see these films, because they were seeing the Corman films, and they stayed around for the second film, and then they saw this and
freaked them the hell out.
Understandably so.
It's a little different. It's a little different pace. That's for sure.
Yeah. Which I honestly kind of, upon hearing that, kind of made me. It still kind of surprised me, is because, I mean, kids actually watching the other films, the Roger Corman, Vincent Price films, kind of surprised me. I mean, yeah, there was usually not a lot of blood, if any, but they weren't filmed for kids. You know, that's the thing that kind of surprised me. It was like, why were they allowed? Yeah, the ratings would probably made them available, but still, you know, you see what I'm saying?
Right, but and again, like you were talking about, the standards were different back then too.
Yeah, that's true.
So, you'd have to say what you will about the Corman movies, but there wasn't a lot of sexualized behavior in those movies. He was not going for that. He was going for the creepy factor.
Right.
Across the, I'm generalizing, obviously, but so, and if you're not going into hardcore gore, then, there's not really a reason to pin an R rating on it. So, other than a few, you can get away with some hints and allegations, but, it wouldn't surprise me to go back and look at ratings on those American International Corman films and find out there's a lot of PGs in there, or whatever the equivalent was back then. I think the PG thing didn't really happen until after that, but there were equivalent ratings, and I suspect a lot of them were not really that advanced a rating, whereas something like Night of the Living Dead, holy cow, you'd have been lucky to not get an X rating right off the bat, or whatever the equivalent was back then.
Right.
I want to say it was the early to mid 70s when the rating system shifted, if I remember right. They were the ratings. They were similar, but they were not exactly the same before that.
I was trying to see if I could find that.
Another factor that played into kind of the popularity, or at least how often it got screened, was a small mistake that was made when the film was originally printed. And if I remember correctly from the documentary, Romero pretty much owns the mistake. He's like, yeah, I screwed up.
When they changed the name?
It was the copyright thing.
Right.
They did not post a copyright on the opening of the movie, which means that it honestly almost instantly went into the public domain.
Mm-hmm.
So movie theaters could show it without paying the production company anything. Because that's the way that always worked before, was there was a production company, whoever owned the copyright, you had to pay them a certain amount to be able to show the movie in your theater. But if it's not copyrighted, and there were some lawsuits and stuff to deal with all of that, and later on it got put on, but by then it's kind of too late. It's kind of sort of still in the public domain. So it got showed in a lot more theaters than it might have otherwise, because theaters weren't having to pay anybody to do it, to show the movie. And so more people probably got to see the movie because of it, and so the popularity spread. I mean, it was also a good movie, so I mean, it would have spread anyway, but it would not have spread as quickly as it did because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, because any horror DVD collection you will see, it's going to be on there.
Yeah, all those collections that have like a ton of movies on just a few discs. Yeah, those are all public domain films. They couldn't do it. They couldn't afford to print those otherwise.
Right.
And yeah, Night of the Living Dead is on all of them. If they're horror related in any way, Night of the Living Dead is on them.
Now, this may be coincidental, but when the rating system that we have today took effect on films was November 1st, 1968. Exactly 1 month after
later.
This.
Wow.
I knew it was around there somewhere, but yeah, I didn't realize it was that close. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's when all of them got together. Like I said, they've changed wordings and ratings, but it's basically the same system.
Mm-hmm. And they basically use kind of the same system for doing it that they did back then. There was a movie about that too. I think a documentary. Can't remember what it was called, and this was a few years ago. This was several years ago, actually. But yeah, there was a documentary made about the rating system itself, and the people involved in the rating system were not cooperative with this thing. There was a lot of talking to people who had basically been in to argue with the group, with the council or whatever they call them. And so they were getting a lot of the information second and third hand, but it was interesting, to say the least. It is definitely run by a small, or at least was at the time, and this is, like I said, 15 years ago or something.
Mm-hmm.
Run by a very small group of people with very specific ideas of what the way things should be, and it was very, I don't know, it was interesting. It was an interesting documentary.
I know there's been a remake, but what would happen if this was created now as an original? Would it have the ability to stand or not?
See, that's another tough one.
Yeah, because, see, my mind automatically goes to The Walking Dead. I know, you guys don't like it, but if there hadn't been shows like this, I don't think, well, of course he said it was an influence, so I don't think we would have had the same kind of shows to, you know. It's kind of like you have to have that one before you had the others. And this was that one that kind of opened the door and said it was okay. Yeah. So I don't think it would be. I don't think it would be as popular as it is today.
Yeah, my concern with it would be, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to word this. I don't know if it would, especially the way it was made, I don't know if it would meet the standards of today. And if it did, like I said earlier, it would have to be, the budget would have to be a lot higher.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if an indie, if this movie had not happened 50 years ago, I don't know if an indie zombie movie would have the same impact now. I don't know if you could start the zombie renaissance, for lack of a better term, today the way it was started 50 years ago.
Well, I think it would kind of, I don't know, if you take everything you know about zombies and ghouls and put it out of your head for a movie today, I think it would kind of come off corny. Almost like a Shaun of the Dead kind of thing or something, you know.
Oh, damn it, get out of my head. I was just thinking, I kid you not, my next comment was going to be it would have totally screwed up the Cornetto trilogy because you would never have had Shaun of the Dead. You just couldn't do it. It wouldn't make sense. But yeah.
Yeah.
It's a cool movie, by the way.
It is, but
I think it might be the weakest of the trilogy, but it is still a cool movie.
And I think too, it was very shocking for the time. You know, nowadays it would take a lot to shock people. You know?
I agree.
They would walk away, not enough blood, not enough violence, you know.
Right.
They should have had another gun.
Because just because you shut down the zombie thing doesn't mean that horror movies haven't developed at the same pace. Because I think they mostly would have.
They would have.
So to create a horror movie that would have that kind of impact, it would have to be a very different movie. It would have to be a lot more. I can't think of a better word than overproduced, but yeah, you couldn't do it the same way. I don't think.
I don't think so.
And if you're, just in case anybody's curious, the movie, the documentary about the rating system, this film is not yet rated. It's from 2006, and it is an interesting story. Or set of stories.
I'm going to check that out.
Yeah.
And also the other one y'all threw out, Birth of the Living Dead.
Birth of the Living Dead. That is, I believe that was 2012? Yeah, 2012.
I have to watch those.
We know our documentaries around here, that's for sure.
Right. Sounds corny, but I learned so much from you guys. A lot of times it's like, oh, I think I know this, and then I show up and it's like, wow. Maybe I didn't know this. So.
The deal is we've been doing it to each other for so long now that, yeah, you came in a little later and you're getting hit with the flood.
Yeah.
You're having to catch up.
So y'all keep me around for the laughs. No.
Hey, that's my job.
Was there supposed to be an answer for that? I don't.
It was rhetorical. I didn't want to know.
I kid. Hell no. We've learned so much about The Walking Dead from you. What are you talking about?
Yeah, more than y'all want to.
Oh yeah.
Have to find ways to out-squirrel me.
I learn a lot from my kid in that regard, but anyway.
Well, it's been called a lot of things. I've just never heard it called a squirrel. So.
Oh yeah, that became the joke real early on with our kid. Oh look, squirrel.
Yep.
Easily distracted.
What else do you have, Thomas?
I was about to ask you that question, Les.
That's why I'm getting this in, so I don't have to answer that question.
You've been kind of silent about this subject.
What?
Oh,
he's like, Mikey, replay the tape.
He's chimed in a few times. He's asking questions over here. He's doing great.
Yeah.
Start at the 2-minute mark. Go.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just like friggin' hosting a podcast with Mrs. Doubtfire. Yeah.
Well, that's what Les should be dressed up for Halloween.
That would be awesome.
I knew the bus was coming. I just knew the bus was coming.
Oh, well, if you'd quit showing up in the bus and then leaving the keys in it and getting out, you wouldn't have this problem.
True that.
All right, you mentioned Rotten Tomatoes earlier, Liz. So
Yep.
how would each of us rate this movie? Let's just, for the sake of simplicity, let's do a 1 to 10 scale.
Okay.
I'm going to go with an 8, just because I thought the cliche of the woman driver driving her car into a tree was overdone, but I'll go with an 8.
I thought that was real footage.
Ooh,
I think it was.
Wow.
he thought it was a documentary up until about the 7-minute mark.
Maybe that's why she was so spacey for the rest of the film, She really hit her head.
Les, what's your rating?
Other than spookier than hell, I'm going to give it, for the innovative way it was done, I'm going to give it a 9. And I'm looking past the idea of midnight movies to watch this, although that is one hell of a way to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that there was a little more than just that. And I give it the rating I did for that.
Cool.
I would give it a 9 as well. I thought the story, it was a pretty good story. The spook factor is great. The ending was very unexpected, which is something we haven't even mentioned yet. It was something totally different, and that's something I like. There are so many films out there that are cookie cutters, and this was definitely not one of them. Whether that was intentional or not, it wasn't. It wasn't cookie cutter. It was something different. And I think that's the reason why it's still highly regarded. Are there parts where you kind of cringe a little bit because of the acting or some of the dialogue? Yeah, but that happens in a lot of films.
Yeah.
Dialogue's hard.
That's not stuff if that's stuff you think about when you see a movie, then you don't really have a high regard for the film, because it's obviously...
That's right. There's more to it than that. Dialogue's a very small part, for sure.
Well, I'm just saying, obviously the story didn't grab you or anything else was going on. If all you can remember is bad acting and bad dialogue, then it's not a good film.
Yeah.
And this is certainly not that. It's a really good film, and I think it really does rate a 9.
Yeah, I think you're right on that, because the first half of the film, it's just him and her. It's not until the second half that you get the creature from the basement that came up, but there wasn't a whole lot of, other than girls snap it together kind of thing going on. So,
well, and then you had the fighting in between Ben and the, I can't remember, Mr. Cooper, for basically controlling the group. What do you want to do? Well, we should get out of here. Well, it's not a good idea to get out of here because we can get caught. Well, the thing is if we stay here, then we're stuck, and if they come in, we're dead.
Trapped. Yep. Nowhere to run. Although that kid was stupid for getting in the truck that was on fire. Hello. The truck is on fire. Run away.
Yeah, but it's one of those deals where there's going to be somebody who's going to do that, who's going to do something that stupid. That's because people are stupid. I mean, people are dumb and panicky.
That's the sad part, because he was the smart one of the group. He knew how to work the pump, and he knew how to work the truck, which is the only way they could get away. And then he blew himself up.
And he was a local, so he knew
the area.
He knew the area.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was the worst one. He was the worst one to lose, but he wasn't. No, it just. Yeah.
Yep.
But what you were saying, Mike, reminds me of I actually just saw this as a meme on Twitter. And it reminds me of the line of dialogue from the original Men in Black. A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky.
Yep.
And yeah.
Absolutely. They are. I mean, the more people, especially the more people. That's why it makes such a big difference in the film when you basically introduce a handful more characters. I mean, at the beginning, it's just Ben and Barbara, and it's pretty clear that Ben's in charge because Barbara's kind of out of her gourd most of the time. But you kind of get to a point where that dynamic is played out. I mean, that's not going to change, and so that's where you throw in another group.
Everybody
of people.
else,
right?
Yeah, it's
and
in the cellar.
You get more character development that way. You get more interaction. You get more conflict.
Yeah,
changes the game in terms of story. It just purely in terms of story, it changes the game, and it does it at a great time in the film too.
Yeah. With how hated Mr. Cooper was at the time, he really did add that sense to, if you're scared, what would you do? Would you go upstairs if you heard fighting? Would you stay where it was safe? Or if you were inside a house, would you keep the door open or would you shut it? I mean, so it kind of added that human aspect to it.
I mean, what is the right answer? I mean, do you barricade yourself and hope for the best, or do you stay up on the first floor and, as Cooper said, a way out is a way in? You can't protect all the doors and windows, but it is also an opportunity to get out too.
Yeah.
So I mean, there really wasn't a right answer.
Right, no. And we've spent 50 years now making zombie movies and zombie TV shows, honestly exploring that very question. And there is no answer.
Yeah.
I mean, the answer is we're all hosed.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of how long and how creatively we can hold out. And yeah, I mean, this was the beginning of that.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool, really.
And to your comment, Liz, about how Barbara was treated in the film, I would recommend seeing the 1990 remake that was directed by Tom Savini. It stars Patricia Tallman as Barbara and Tony Todd as Ben, and I'm not exactly.
It's a different take on that.
It's definitely a different take. Yeah, and Barbara is not the, oh my God, I'm just going to zone out because I just saw my brother die. She
kicks some ass.
She kicks some ass.
Yeah, I know there's a time to grieve, but come on, girl.
Right. And you get a lot more of that in the remake. It is not a better movie. Don't let us trick you into thinking you're watching something better. But that character is very different in the movie, in the remake.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know his name, but the Ben character, wasn't that Candyman?
Yes, that is Candyman.
Okay. I think I saw that, but didn't watch that. Yeah.
It was an interesting take. It really was.
Yeah, it was a different thing for sure. Whether that's good or bad, watch it for yourself and judge. But
Right.
That's cool. I'll have to put it on my list too.
There you go.
Oh, and if anybody hasn't seen this yet, it is on Amazon Prime, the digitally remastered one. So it's still the 68 black and white one, just a little more pixelated.
There you go.
But I think it's also on YouTube, and there was one other one. But it's free with your Amazon Prime.
Oh, and it'll start showing up here real soon as we get closer to Halloween, because it's public domain, so anybody can just pick it up and show it all the time.
Well, it was on the TV on demand, so
Okay.
I think Stars is also playing it right now.
Probably.
By the time the show comes out, it'll be that Tuesday, so a week from now.
Okay.
So, because I was like, well, that won't help me.
yeah, that's not helpful at all, is it?
Not at all.
Damn, they didn't plan that well at all. They should be
And I
planning
think
around
the
our
cop-
podcast, damn it.
Right.
There you go.
And the copy I have is VHS. Who has a VCR anymore?
Oh, dang.
Mm.
Not me.
A personal note. Mike may not remember me telling him this because it's been a long time. But the first time I ever saw this movie was, I'm pretty sure it was back in '89. And up to that point, I knew nothing of these type of creatures. Didn't know anything in the history, that kind of thing. Now, obviously, this is before the internet, that kind of stuff. I did have a dream the night before I saw the film, and somehow I knew exactly how to take out these creatures. I still, to this day, don't know how. You know, the blow to the head or a shot to the head or fire, that kind of stuff. I don't know where I got this information, but I had dreamed it, and then when I watched the film the next night, I'm like, what the hell?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's osmosis.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Cultural knowledge.
Mm. And we've gone through all this without quoting the best line of the film. That was from the sheriff. They're dead. They're all messed up. That's such a great line. You're just like, well, yeah, I guess so. If they're dead, they're kind of messed up.
See, that's the great thing about, you talk about the dialogue being questionable in spots. And that's one of those that maybe the dialogue is questionable, but it's questionable in such a realistic way that you just don't think about it. You're just like, yeah, why wouldn't the guy say that?
Right.
So yeah, it works. Somehow it works. And a lot like this movie just in general. I mean, it was made on a shoestring budget, flying by the seat of their pants, with a few ideas and some loyal friends, fortunately. But it all works.
Alrighty. On that note, we are going to take a quick break and come back with our weekly picks. And we're back, and it's time for our weekly picks, and I lead off this week.
Yay.
And yay. My first pick is from Marvel. And this is a collection called Marvel Knights Black Panther by Price and Teixeira. It was written by Christopher Price and with art by Joe Quesada, Vince Evans, and Mark Teixeira. And yes, it's not the former baseball player. 2018 marks the 20th anniversary of the Marvel Knights imprint, and they're actually coming back as at least as a short miniseries that's being written by Donny Cates. So to celebrate all this, they are reprinting the original runs, and this is one of them. It's obviously Black Panther. It collects the first 5 issues. I was impressed with the Marvel Knights run. So it's kind of cool to see this come back. And Christopher Priest is a hell of a writer, and Teixeira's an awesome artist. I remember him first being introduced to his Ghost Rider run in the early 90s. So it would be nice to see this again, and a lot of this stuff has never been collected before. So it's kind of cool to get to think that this stuff is going to be, these books are going to be in new eyes for the first time in forever. So I'm excited about this.
Sweet.
I am too. I wasn't that into the Marvel Knights, but I remember seeing a card drawn by Teixeira at a winery in California. And he had a drawing, and it just took me. It was so well done, and I was really tempted to pull it off the bulletin board, but I refused.
That was probably a wise thing.
Yeah.
He's a very, very good artist. I was truly impressed, and hopefully, I'm sure he did an amazing job for the Marvel Knights title.
Les, you're actually next.
Okay, my first choice is from DC Comics. Brian Michael Bendis is returning his creator-owned series of Powers, Scarlet, and the United States of Murder, Inc. This is under what they call Jinx World Sampler. They have 3 small reprints in this issue of the 3 titles of which I just spoke. These are really interesting titles with Michael Avon Emming doing the United States of Murder, Inc., and Alex Maleev doing the Scarlet titles. Mm-hmm. If you get a chance to locate the early editions of these comics, that's great. If you can, it's even better if you can find the collected versions of them. And Scarlet is going to be one of the first comics coming out. And if I recall, Scarlet was just an amazing story. And therefore, with these Jinx World titles, I say step up. This is good stuff.
Yeah, when it was first announced that Bendis was moving over, there had been a lot of questions if these titles were going to move over as well, and this is the first of not only these titles returning, but Pearl just came out recently, and he's got a couple of other books that are creator owned. So they're not gone. They're coming back, and it's kind of cool to see that, because Powers was a really good book. Scarlet was a really good book. I don't think I read United States of Murder, Inc., but I definitely want to get my hands on that one and check it out.
Cool.
Alrighty, Liz, you are next.
All right. My first pick is actually coming from the Sandman universe, which I think was released a couple of weeks ago. But this is called The Dreaming. The Sandman universe kind of turned itself upside down and revealed a space between the universe and dreams. So this world, Dreaming, is now in a big mess. Dream has actually left his kingdom, and so all the story smiths, they can't write stories, and it's just a bad place to be right now. So they're going to have Dora, the monstrous, come in, and she's going to be stealing dreams from people and creating her own kind of chaos there until Dream gets it together and comes back for his kingdom. So if you're into the Sandman universe, this is a really good title. Like I said, I think the Sandman universe from a couple of weeks ago kind of gives you a backstory. So if you haven't read all of the Sandman or the other beautiful stories that came out of that, this kind of sums it up for you to get you ready for this story. So should be a good one.
Cool.
So this is a primer type for the Sandman series?
It's an offshoot. I think
Okay.
they're going to have quite a few come from the Sandman universe, the way that
Yeah, there's
things
like
went down.
3 or 4 different series, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Which I
And-
guess will be kingdoms, like Dream is.
I think so. Cool. Alrighty, Mikey.
All right. My first pick is a Dynamite book, and Dynamite has been doing a really nice job with the James Bond franchise stuff that they've been doing. And so this book, this new one, is called James Bond Origin. This is the number 1. And it is set in World War II with a 17-year-old Bond kind of just starting to get his military training underway. And like I said, I have a tendency at this point to give Dynamite the benefit of whatever doubt there might be on the Bond books, because they're doing a really good job. I mean, and they've been bringing in different writers. This time we've got Jeff Parker coming in, and with the artist Bob Q. And I expect this to be a whole lot of fun.
Cool.
Sounds
Yeah.
like fun.
Yeah, they've been really interesting reads, and they've been successful because they keep on going. So
Yep.
So that's cool. Okay, I'm up again, and so for my second choice, I stay with Marvel, and this is a new series called Asgardians of the Galaxy. Art by Matteo Lolli and written by our friend Cullen Bunn. This is spinning out of the Affinity Awards, which I will go ahead and admit I'm not reading, so I don't know what's going on. But this is going to be a new group of cosmic right doers that's led by Valkyrie, Scourge the Executioner, Angela, who's been MIA since for a while. So I guess since she was part of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and then she disappeared. Kevin Masterson, who was Thunderstrike at one time. And then, of all people, the Destroyer, who Cullen has teased there's someone in the armor, but we don't know who it is, and when everybody finds out, it's going to be a shock. And then Throg, the frog version of Thor. So it's a very unique group of characters here, and I'm definitely curious on how this is going to go. So I'm going to go ahead and check it out.
Cool.
Has Marvel been this eclectic before?
I think they've been kind of trying to diversify things lately, but other than that,
I think it's a great idea.
They shake things up from time to time, but yeah, that's an interesting group.
It's a very interesting lineup. I totally agree.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. Les, you're up again.
All right. From my stash here, I'm going to pick cover number 1. This is from DC Comics. 2 is Brian Michael Bendis, another one of his creator-owned. And in this one, the American intelligence community looks at comic book creators and decide that they may be the perfect cover for as operatives because they travel everywhere, all over the world. So this is going to appeal to me because you've got the international spy network and you're having the comic book writers, artists getting to be the spies in this case. I don't know if this is going to be a comedy, but I've got a feeling it's going to be pretty darn serious. It is listed as intended for mature audience.
Interesting idea. Have Con will travel?
I was thinking it was kind of like I Spy, except for instead of it being a tennis pro, it's a comic book pro. Which would it's an interesting idea. It
Sure.
definitely is.
Why not?
Cool. Definitely one to check out. Liz.
All right. My second pick is actually a reissue, I guess. It was given out on Free Comic Book Day. It's Die Kitty Die. This is number 0. This is getting ready for the new, I don't know if it's going to be a mini-series or an ongoing series called Heaven and Hell for Die Kitty Die. So they say that we're going to get a different kind of cover and some bonus content, but she's actually died, and 0 kind of you figure out who killed her. And I guess the series will start when she goes to heaven or she goes to hell. So we shall see. So if you missed it for Free Comic Book Day, which is actually funny because the story, it's Free Comic Book Day for them too. So if you missed it, be sure to pick this one up, and definitely the series when it starts.
Yep, I think that's one of our favorite titles around here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So. Alrighty, Mikey.
Okie dokie. My second pick is a Titan book. Apparently, Titan is continuing their series, their Michael Moorcock series. And this one is entitled Elric the White Wolf. This is a number 1 of 2. And this is the continuation of their Elric series. They're have been doing an amazing job of translating the works of Moorcock into comic form. And this particular story has everyone's favorite emperor having escaped the burdens of his throne for the time being, and traveling the lands as just basically a roving adventurer with a black sword. These stories are mainstays of fantasy literature and have been for years. So it is really cool to see them getting some love from the comics perspective. They've been reprinting stuff from years ago. Over the last year or so, they have, I don't even know, I want to say at least 4 or 5 volumes that they've reprinted. And this is, I think this is new stuff, so it should certainly be interesting if you're into fantasy comics, which I am, so you know.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
This is how I found out about Elric and Michael Moorcock, were the comics done by Pete Craig Russell back in the 90s. And each story was pretty friggin' great. And I'm so happy that they're releasing another one now, because it's time.
Cool. And our honorable mention this week is...
It's one from our favorites. It's Bully Wars. This will replace the hole that I Hate Fairyland left us.
I hope so.
I hope so. Anything he does is really cute and funny, so I don't think this one will be as gory as Fairyland because it is an all-age comics. But it looks... yeah,
let's hope not then, jeez.
You know, it'll be toned down a little, but probably still just as funny. But it sounds like a bully from the time he was in kindergarten finally starts high school and everything changes. He becomes the bullied. So he has to make some new friends and navigate this thing called high school, you know, which is actually the Bully Wars. And whoever wins the Bully Wars wins the school. So it'll be kind of curious where this goes. And if he'll see the error of his ways, maybe. But like I said, should be really good. He's got some good artists with him on this one, and he's talked about it quite a bit over on Twitter, and he's really pumped this one up. So, fingers crossed, it should be a good one.
Yep. Should be exciting.
Should be.
Cool. Alrighty. Any special mentions this week?
No, not from me.
Nothing here.
Okay. I will go ahead and start with our regular shout-outs then. First, want to thank Manny the Martyr for providing the music for our podcast, our show. Definitely would encourage you to check out their music. There will be a link in our show notes. Thank you guys very, very much. Second of all, would like to thank the fine folks that constitute the Podern family over on Twitter for spreading the word of the fellowship by retweeting our links and all that. Definitely recommend y'all go check them out. It's easy to do. Just go to Twitter. Don't necessarily have to have an account, and do a search. Hashtag Podern Family is one word. And just scroll down, and if a particular show or episode catches your eye, just download that episode and check it out, and who knows, you probably picked up another show to listen to. So thank you guys very, very much. And finally, you, dear listener, thank you for listening to today's episode. We appreciate your support as always. We value your feedback. If you have a question, comment, suggestion, observation, complaint, whatever, we would like to hear from you. And there are several ways you can do that. One is email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, or you can go to the website and click on the About Us tab, and there's a contact form that you can fill out. We ask that you follow us on social media, and you can contact us through that way. On Facebook, it's The Fellowship of the Geeks, and on Twitter, at Fellowship Geeks. And if you like to follow our personal Twitter accounts, you're more than welcome to. Mike can be found at Mikey Geek. Liz can be found at Newman_L, and I can be found at TomTCGeek. And wherever you download our episodes, whether it's through iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify, or YouTube, it would be awesome if you would rate and review our shows. Be very, very appreciative if you do that. Any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening once again, friends. It's greatly appreciated. And until next time, read more comics and support your local stores. We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,